Welcome to our first adult take and make program. In this session, we will be making one of these yarn birds. Now let's talk about the supplies that you will need to do this program. If you are finding this craft and you didn't pick up a kit from the Davenport Library and you're wondering how to get the yarn, let me go ahead and show you how to do that. So, you just need a 5-inch long piece of cardboard and then your 3 colors of whatever yarn you're going to use. For each, what you're going to do is you're going to wrap your yarn around this 5-inch piece of cardboard. And I'd used about 1 inch wide. But you're going to wrap your yarn around this cardboard until it's about 1/2 inch thick from top to bottom right here. Once you've done that, you'll cut it at this seam and then you'll have your pieces of yarn, and you'll do that for all different 3 colors that you're going to do. After you've done that, you still need to remember that you need your 5-inch piece and your 8-inch piece. So you need a 5-inch piece of your underside and your wings, and then a 5-inch piece for your top and an 8-inch piece for your top as well. So for this craft, you will need 3 different types of yarn. And I have chosen these 3 colors, so we're gonna make one that looks like one of these yarn birds. So you are going to need 3 types of yarn, 1 scrap of orange paper. You are also going to need 3 pieces of wire, 2 that are 8 inches and 1 that is 3 inches. You will also need 2 little black beads. These are just perler beads that I am using. You are also going to need a 1/2 sheet of paper. It doesn't matter what color this is, as long as it's a 1/2 sheet. If you are coming to this program having received one of the kits from the Davenport Public Library, all of these supplies were provided in the kit that you picked up. Some additional supplies that you're going to need that were not provided in the kit are a pair of scissors, some type of glue, and a ruler. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started making our yarn bird. Like I said, if you picked up a kit, you have received some instructions in the kit, but I'm going to show you how to make it today. So first, you need to determine which part of your yarn will serve as the underside, the wings of the bird, and then the top of the bird. So for this example, I'm going to use white for my underside, the light purple for my wings, and then the dark purple for the top. So if you received a kit, you are going to start with your top of the bird yarn bundle. Untie your yarn bundle, but don't throw away the piece that tied it. We're going to cut this. First, we're going to cut a 5-inch section, and then we're going to cut an 8-inch section. These sections are going to come in handy for when we tie our pieces together. So after you've cut your 5 inches and your 8 inches from your tie, you can set the remainder off to the side. We're not going to need that. So let's go ahead and move our top pieces over to the side. Now let's undo the underside. So we're going to untie that. We're going to straighten out our underside cords. They don't need to be perfectly even on the side because at the end we're going to cut them off. So this is all of our underside yarn. And for our underside, we only need a 5-inch piece. So we're going to lay that out against our ruler and then cut off a 5-inch. We're going to keep the 5-inch and set the rest off to the side. We're not going to need that. Now let's take apart our wings. So we're going to untie that bundle, straighten that out, and then cut a 5-inch piece, which we're going to keep, and then set those off to the side. So we have cut all of the different pieces of yarn that we're going to need. So I'm going to set our scissors and our ruler off to the side, and we are going to move into the next part of making our yarn bird. So we are going to lay out our yarn bundles so that we know all the different pieces that we are going to use. Let's set aside this 8-inch piece because we are not going to need that for a little bit, and we don't want it to get confused with the rest of our pieces. So what you want to do is you're going to start with your underside piece, and you're going to lay that horizontally on your work surface. Then you're going to take your top yarn. My top yarn is this dark purple. I'm going to lay that perpendicular across my underside yarn. And now we are going to make it so that our pieces interlock. So I'm going to fold our underside yarn over and then fold our top side yarn over so that it looks like this. If you look at our finished yarn bird, you'll notice that our top piece goes straight, and then our underside is in like a V. So we want to mirror that with the work that we're doing. So we want our top piece in one section and then our underside in a V. So we're going to take our 5-inch piece with the corresponding color. So I'm going to start with the dark purple first, and we're going to tie our 5-inch piece around all of our top yarn. You're going to tie the yarn groups together as close to the fold as you can get. I'm just using a regular double knot. So I've got my top piece done, and now I'm going to tie my underside. So I'm going to push those as close together as I can, and then do another double knot as close to the fold as I can get. If you're not as close as you like, what you can do is you can push your knot up closer to the top of your yarn bird. Okay, so we've made our knots. At this point, as long as your knots are secure, you can trim the excess, or you can just leave it there. Next, we're going to take our wings and the 5-inch piece that we cut from that, and we are going to tie this in half as well. So we're just going to take our 5-inch piece and we're going to tie this one in half. Perfect. So we have tied our underside and our top pieces together into this interlocking shape. Remember, we want our top piece to look like one piece, and then we want our underside to be in a V shape. And we have also tied our wings in half using both the 5-inch pieces that we cut earlier. So now we are going to move on to the next step. So I'm going to take my wing pieces and lay them perpendicular across the knot of my interlocked. Okay, so at this point, we're just going to make sure that our tied pieces are kind of hidden within our other pieces of our yarn. And we are going to grab our half sheet of paper. And this is where we determine how much body our yarn bird is going to have. So all the poofiness of our yarn bird comes from this piece of paper. So we are going to crumple up our half sheet. So that it looks like this. You're going to place our crumpled piece of paper at the intersection of our yarn bundles. Got my crumpled piece of paper. Pull all these tight within my fist. And I'm gonna take my yarn and I'm gonna tie off my yarn bird. I'm gonna make my knot on the underside so it's a little bit hidden. And this is the same double knot that I used earlier. So I'm gonna pull it as tight as I can to give my bird a little bit of definition. So here's the one that we are currently making, and then here is my sample. So at this point, you can take your scissors and then trim your ends so that your tail is bushy. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And then at this point, you can also use your scissors to trim the ends of your knot. So that's as much as I'm gonna trim right now. I'll do a little bit more later. Just go ahead and set those off to the side. Now we are going to make the feet of our yarn bird. So for those, you're going to need your two 8-inch pieces of wire, which I have right here. Pick up one, fold it in half, and you're going to bend the middle of the wire to look like feet. So here are the feet of one of the yarn birds that I made previously. So you're going to bend the middle until you get your feet to look like you want them to look. Once you have your feet shape done, then you're going to twist the ends of the wire around each other. All the way up to the top. So that it looks like this. You're gonna do the same thing with your second piece of 8-inch wire. You're gonna fold it in half and then bend the middle so that it looks like feet. Okay, so now I have my finished 2 feet. I've bent the bottoms to how I want them to look. And then I folded the tops and bent the wire over each other. Now you have 2 options for how you can make your feet. You can either just straight puncture them into the bottom of the underside of your bird until you poke through the paper. So I'm going to use the second method. I'm not going to puncture the bird. I'm going to fold the wire so that it looks a little bit like a U, the end of the wire. So here's the bird's foot. And then I'm going to fold the top part into a U. And I'm going to go to the underside of my bird and kind of loop it through the bottom. And then once it's through the bottom, I'm going to wrap the wire around itself. And that'll hold my bird's leg in place. Here's one finished, and I'm gonna do the same thing with the second. I'm going to bend my wire over so that it has a U shape. And then I'm going to poke it through the bottom. And then I'm going to wrap the wire around itself to secure the leg in. And again, these legs are purely for decorative purposes. They won't hold your yarn bird up very well. So I have both legs attached to the bottom of my yarn bird. Now we need to give our yarn bird a face. So you have this orange scrap of paper, and this is what we're going to use to give our yarn bird a nose. So you're going to make this scrap of paper into a cone. You're just going to roll it around itself until you get to the desired size of your cone. And this is where you need to have your glue. I'm gonna take our glue and we're gonna glue our cone into whatever size you want it to be. Okay. And now we're going to glue it onto our bird. We are going to glue our nose right onto the bird's head where the underside yarn comes together in a V. So we're gonna glue our nose right in this little spot. So I'm just gonna take my glue and I'm going to put some around the rim of my cone. I'm gonna stick it right in the V of where my underside yarn meets my top yarn. We're gonna move on to our eyes. And this is where we need our 3-inch piece of wire and our 2 black beads. These are just perler beads that I had on hand, but you can use any sort of tiny black bead. So we're going to string our black bead onto our wire. We're going to twist the wire together to secure it. So this is where you decide where you want your bird's eyes to be. You're going to stick the wire through your bird's head. Okay, so I have 1 bead here, and you have a lot of extra wire, and that's just fine. So we're gonna string our 2nd bead on. Then we're going to decide how far apart we want our eyes to be. We're going to twist the wire on this side to secure our bead. So after you've done that, you're gonna have some excess wire. You can either cut it off or tuck it into your bird's head. I'm just going to tuck it back into my bird's head. You can use your scissors to trim up the back pieces. And that is your finished yarn bird.